Amen.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Well, just a couple of things before we get into this particular study. Talked yesterday with Mac Pride, and he's asked you to all pray for him as he's having a lot of medical issues lately. And I mean serious medical issues. So he just wants people to pray for him. And you get older and things don't work as good as they did back in the day. So he's at that stage, 80-some years old, and things are not going good. So remember him. As I was talking to him, interesting thing is, Mac is one of those guys that does not have a lot of money, and he lives off of his little retirement that he has, and every week, he comes by this church during the week, and he looks for me or for Jim so that he would put in his offering into the church plate every week. And he does not miss that. Very rarely does he miss it. If he misses it, he brings 2 envelopes the following week. And he always gives his tithe, puts a little money divides his little money for different ministries, and I want to tell you, God sees that and appreciates it very much. And as he was telling me about his problems, which I tell you I would not want to have in my life, he also managed to tell me how blessed he is that God has been with him all of this time, and how even to this day he's sponsoring this little abandoned orphan child in one of these Latin American countries, and he, out of his meager existence, he manages to send a little bit over there every month to take care of somebody like that. So I want to ask you to pray for Mac, that God would be with him in this period of his life that is not easy for him. And also remember all of the rest of our members who are in similar situation. We need to pray for each other. That's what the purpose of the church is. It leads me now to this study about the spiritual warfare between God and Satan. Satan always was fighting to be the ruler of the planet Earth, even though God has given that rulership to us, to the human beings. But Satan has always wanted to be in charge, and from the early days he had tried to establish this, what we call today and refer to as today as the New World Order. It's not so new. It's something that has been around for thousands of years. It's something that has been around for a long, long time, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute. This sermon today, I want to warn you, is going to be very boring, because I find it boring, because when I went through all of this material, I found there are 33 slides here that I find extremely boring, but at the same time, extremely revealing. And extremely, you have to be concerned when you look at this stuff about what's going on this planet and on this earth. So I hope you will bear with me as we go through some of this. So this is kind of an educational time for all of us to really understand what's going on in this world. I called this sermon 9/11 DOB, date of birth for New World Order. Why? Because after 9/11, the United States has changed. Has changed to a degree that most people do not recognize or understand. This is not the same United States, this is not the same America that I came to back in 75. This is not the same America. People who were born after 2011, young people who are today 15 or 16, or somebody like Milos, I was talking to Milos not too long ago, and he came after 9/11, and he says, I don't remember the things you talk about, how it was before, And some people don't understand it, and I hope that the history is not going to just plow over it, and that the America of old will be forgotten. For example, today, and I'm going to talk about this more next Sabbath, but I just want to just quickly give you an idea of how America has changed. You can be arrested today without a warrant. If the government suspects that you have any kind of a terrorist inclination, they can arrest you and deny you the lawyer and keep you in jail indefinitely. That's not what America used to be before 9/11. You couldn't do that. If you were going to be arrested, the judge had to issue an order for a warrant for your arrest. There had to be a probable cause. There had to be a reason why you were going to jail. Not anymore. Today in America, a police can stop you on a sidewalk. If you're walking down the sidewalk, minding your own business, they can stop you and they can demand that you show your identification and your papers, and all in the name of safety, all in the name of fight against the terrorism. And to me, it's an abomination, because this is what I experienced back in the communist country, where they could just stop you and interrogate you and take you to jail, keep you there indefinitely as long as they wanted to, wouldn't have to let your family know about it, nothing, So America is really becoming what I think the old Soviet Union. Even Russia, I think, is not as bad as we are going to get yet in the future. So you can be arrested, you can be asked for your papers. You realize that our government now officially has given itself the right and the authority to torture people. And we have tortured literally thousands of people in prisons all around the world with the countries that cooperate with us on this. And this is a huge sin, I believe, that our government is committing against God and against the human rights, torture of people, torturing them for information. This is not America that we know. This is not America that used to be. This is not America that was built and organized on the freedom of speech, on the freedom of movement. This is not the America that was based on the Constitution of the United States. This is something else. This is something totally else. So, America is changing in all kinds of ways. Cash money today is monitored to a great degree. I was at the bank this last spring and I wanted to take out $2,000. I was going to buy something, I forget what, a motorcycle or something. And the lady says to me, "Oh, this is going to take a while." I said, "What do you mean it's going to take a while?" She said, "Oh, it's going to take about 15 minutes to get $2,000. I said, "Why?" She said, "Because if you take more than $2,000 out of the bank, we have to report it to the government and you have to fill out all of this paper." I'm serious. Chase Bank, right down the street here, And I said, "How about if I just take $1,999? And she says, "Yeah, you can do that." So that's what I did, I had a few bucks in my wallet. But the point is, you can't take your money out of the bank, cash money, without the government knowing about it. If you get pulled over in your vehicle, you driving down I-70 and you get pulled over. I got pulled over some years ago back in Nebraska. And the police pulled me over, asked for the ID and all of that. He said I was speeding, and I probably was. But next thing he said was, is it okay if I look through your car? And I said, "Why?" And he says, "It's just routine. We just check the cars for drugs and whatnot." And I says, "I got nothing to hide. Go ahead." And I just bought that nice Lexus that I had. Back then it was really, really nice, And all of a sudden he had this big old German Shepherd jumping up and down my seats and sniffing and it took 45 minutes for them to get satisfied that I didn't have anything in my car. Now, if I had cash in the car, if I had $500 or if I had $1,000 or if I had any amount more than $500-$600, they have the right to confiscate that from you until you prove that you are not a drug dealer. And most of the time in America today, you cannot recover that money. It takes years and years of litigation and judges and rules and whatnot before you can get that money. That's why I call this series today and next week that 9/11 was the date of birth, DOB, for New World Order. And New World Order is starting here in the United States of America. Our government really is the main force behind establishment and implementation of the New World Order. It's our government. Don't think it's some other guys over there, whatever. Our government has a major role in it, and you're going to see that here in a minute. New World Order definition, and this is taken right off of the pages of the internet. So, I don't necessarily agree with everything that this is going to say, but there are some good points here. Worldwide conspiracy being orchestrated by an extremely powerful and influential group of genetically related individuals, which include many of the world's wealthiest people, top political leaders, corporate elite, as well as members of the so-called black nobility of Europe, dominated by the British Crown, whose goal is, and this now, so everything that we said so far, you can kind of agree with it or not. The point is that there are very powerful people in this world, heads of corporations, people who control billions and trillions of dollars of money that is exchanging hands every day, people that control all of the businesses of this world, trade, all of that stuff, they are at the top. So what this is saying is that these people, they have a goal, and their goal is to create a one world. They say here fascist. Fascism really is a term that describes what happens when corporations and the government become indistinguishable from each other. That's what fascism is. When corporations are all of a sudden in charge of what government should be doing. In other words, you can go and vote, but it doesn't matter because corporations have decided it's going to be this way. So one world government, stripped of nationalistic and regional boundaries. Can you see that that's happening in Europe right now? They have a huge refugee problem that was created by, in part, some of the actions that our government has taken in African countries. And we have civil wars going on now in 5 or 6 countries in North Africa, and all of those people are going to Europe, you see. And European Union is saying, we got to open the borders, you got to let them in. So Europe now has become, in effect, one big country, one big 700 million people country. You see, European Union consists of 700 million people. So they are now becoming one country, no national borders, no regional boundaries. And the government that doesn't have national regional boundaries, and that is also, now notice this, obedient to the agenda of these powerful people or of these corporations. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you were the CEO of, let's say, Walmart, one of the largest corporations in the world, and you could write the laws on the books, the country's laws? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you were the CEO of that country? You could write all the laws to benefit your corporation. So this is why, to a degree, this is happening. Their intention is to effect complete and total control over every human being on the planet. And also, we talked about this before, to reduce the population to about 500 million people on the planet. And this has been the goal of the so-called Illuminati for centuries. To have just a small earthly population, and the idea is to protect the environment because, as you know, bad human beings are destroying everything. Now I'm being facetious a little bit, but that's the idea. So this is the agenda. This is the New World Order. Now, what do I believe? I believe that some of this is true, what we just read. I don't say that you have to accept this as gospel, because obviously it's not the gospel. But there is, I believe, an effort to create one world government that is basically going to control everything that happens on this planet. When I said that New World Order is an old, ancient thing, it's nothing new about it. What I meant was, and was referring to, was the story in Genesis 10 verse 4, Story that is familiar to every Christian child that goes to a Sabbath school or a Sunday school. And they said, come, let us build a city where the tower with its top in heaven. You remember, this is the story of the Tower of Babel. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. I want to spend just 2 minutes talking about this verse so we understand exactly what it means. They said, come, let us build a city. They, the people of the earth, they were the early Sumerians. They were the fathers and grandfathers of Abraham that came from Sumeria. They worshipped the heavenly gods, the sun and the moon. And they had a list of the myriad of gods and semi-gods that they worshipped at the time. You remember when God called Abraham, he left all of those gods behind and he moved on to follow the one true God. You see, so these people, they say, come, let us build this city in a tower with its top in heaven. Traditionally, we have interpreted that to mean that the tower is going to be so tall that its peak is going to reach the heaven. Well, that's not necessarily how the Hebrews interpret the text. In the King James Bible, it says, let us build a city with its top onto a heaven. And you can also understand this verse to mean when you build a tower like that, the top. What is at the top? At the top, you have a group of people who are in charge of everything, right? They're always on the penthouse floor. They're always at the top. They wanted to reach where? All the way to the heaven and mingle with the gods that they worshipped back at the time. You know how this story ended, right? They wanted to create a city. They wanted people not to scatter around. Look at this picture of the Tower of Babel that you have. I just want you to notice the architecture. And look at the top. You see, they wanted to build this thing because they believed that if they had really a temple to the heavenly gods that they worshipped with a small g, that people would stay around that temple. What happens today when there is a temple? The temple, the mosque in Jerusalem, all of the Muslims go over there and worship it. Jews, they want to build a temple so that all of the people of their persuasion would go and worship it. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we have temples in Loma Linda and Andrews University, and all of the Seventh-day Adventists, they go over there and they congregate around the temple. And in Mormon tradition, you have a temple in Salt Lake City and everybody goes and, so that's what they wanted to do. They did not want to scatter. They wanted to stay around their temple that they were going to build to these gods. Now you remember the story. God himself, the true God, he was immediately against that idea. He was immediately against that idea. And he came down and he says, let's mix them up. Let's confuse them. Let's mix their languages so they can't stay here and they cannot organize this worship to these false gods. That's the reason why God scattered them all over the place. So he mixed up their languages and they had to leave. These builders, they wanted to erect a temple to the host of heaven, the sun and the moon. So this was going to be the temple to the sun and the moon. People stay close to the temples. Why? And thus, because they wanted to prevent the scattering. Now look at this next picture. Look at the next slide, please. Kristen. No. There is a picture of, there you go. I'm sorry. There you go. Do you know what this is? Anybody? No? European Union. This is European Union. Kristen, could you go back to the Tower of Babel? Look at it. Now look at the European Union again. You see similarities? Okay. I'm not saying that this is something now that we all have to get excited about, but it's similar, isn't it? The construction is similar. Now go back to slide 9, please. To the previous slide, just before this picture. What they wanted at the time, they wanted one government. They wanted no borders. They desired to have the control over every human being. And they also wanted religious compliance at the time of the Tower of Babel. And God simply said No, it's not going to happen. And he destroyed the whole thing. Now, today, we move, 6,000, 6,000 years later, and we see the picture of the European Union, and we all of a sudden see that the goal is the same. One world government, no borders, control over every human being, religious compliance. European Union now is creating this whole idea of Sunday as a day of rest. Why? Not because they're not saying this is a favor to the Catholic Church. They are not saying this is a Sunday law, but they are saying this is a protection for the workers. Protection for the workers so that the workers would not be exploited. They need to have one day when they don't have to do any work. And now they're putting that on the laws all over Europe that Sunday you can't work. No matter what, you can't even work in your own backyard. In Germany for years, if you went out on Sunday and swiped the sidewalk in front of your house, you would be ticketed. So this is what's going on now all over Europe. This is what's going on now all over the world. I'm now starting with these 33 slides that are going to be boring to some of you. But you need to see them. So that's slide number 11 that we're going to start with. And this is how the New World Order is being implemented. Please hear me. Implemented. Not organized, not in the planning stages, not maybe or not if, no. Implementation. We are talking about implementation that is taking place right now as I'm making this speech. It's in the process. The Trans-Pacific Partnership and the United States and European Union Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the 12-nation TPP, would be the world's largest ever trade and investment scheme straddling the Pacific. TTIP, and you know what? You don't have to worry too much about these names, TPP, TTIP. That's not the point. You don't have to remember all of that. I just want you to remember and recognize the effects that this is going to have on every one of us. TTIP would go so far as merging the United States and the European Union, regulatory systems by creating a wholly new common market, mirroring the early common market that over several decades led to the creation of the EU itself. So this partnership is supposed to unite the United States and the European Union. But there is also now, next slide, there is also the lesser-known Trade in Services Agreement, which would be imposed on nearly the entire world. So at the same time, the United States government is making a trade pact with European Union, but it is also that's going back east to Europe, but they are also making a trade agreement by going out west to Asia and making the agreement with all of the Asian countries. So, Christian Gomez of the John Birch Society wrote on August 18, the TISA would give the UN's World Trade Organization unprecedented control of the service sector. Service sector. What is a service sector? Now listen to this. Jobs in banking, finance, courier and postal services, delivery and freight services, energy distribution, healthcare, insurance, maritime, professional services, legal services, licensing, real estate, telecommunications, transportation, tourism, and much more. So all of the regulation would be in the hands of one world body over all of these industries. So now listen to the implications. The whistleblowing website WikiLeaks, which has been dissecting TISA, added, according to World Bank figures, services, the word services, comprise 75% of the European Union economy and 80% of the American economy. And for a typical developing country, services comprise 53% of its economy. In other words, this agreement, TISA, covers the majority of the global economy. Now you may say, what? So what? It's just trade agreements. It doesn't really have anything to do with us. No, keep listening to this. WikiLeaks, which leaked portions of TSA on its website, noted in a recent posting, TISA is the larger component of both these other trade agreements that altogether are called Trinity. So what you have here is the power of the state or states or the countries going into the hands of the global corporations. All parts of this Trinity, they are excluding Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa because some years ago they have decided to create their own united front against everybody else. So those 5 countries are excluded. Let me stop here and just say this. If you're listening to the American news, CNN, Fox, anyone, you pick any, the tone with which they report on these 5 countries that you see on the screen is what? Positive or negative? They ever have anything good to say about Russia? They ever have anything good to say about China or India or Brazil? They just impeached Brazilian president, and that was done really by our own operatives here in the United States who wanted her out. So, are you beginning to see what's going on here? Somebody is controlling all the strings. TISA is currently under negotiation between the United States, the European Union, and 23 other countries. It creates an international legal regime that aims to deregulate and privatize the supply of services which account for the majority of the economy across these countries. Once TISA takes effect, countries representing 70% of the world's services trades will have a common set of rules governing those services, giving them hugely powerful leverage on countries outside of the fact. Today, nearly 80% of America's gross domestic product and 75% of the EU's GDP is made up by the service sector. And this next slide. Understanding TISA means looking at who is sitting around the negotiating table as well as those who are not. In other words, the New World Order is being implemented by using these trade agreements. They want to create a unified code, set of laws for all of the countries to follow. And the country such as the United States, as powerful as it is, would not have a recourse if it was sued by any one of those corporations. And you're going to see that here in a minute. So what's interesting here is that Russia, China, and we can skip some of these slides. The point of these next slides is that Russia and China and India are being kept out of this and being isolated out of this. Why? Because they're not following necessarily our policy, our foreign policy. They have their own agenda. There has been, slide 28, much concern over the chilling effect these international trade agreements have on human rights policy, since they allow investors to bring claims against states in ISDS. When a governmental measure negatively, listen to this, when a governmental measure negatively impacts the value of the investment or the investor feels they were treated unfairly. So a corporation such as Walmart or IBM or a British corporation or any of these corporations, they can bring a lawsuit against the United States. They can bring a lawsuit against any one of these countries. And you're going to see that here in a second of how they can do that. These claims can arise, for example, a state legislates to protect public health, such as banning pollutants. Well, a corporation can say, hey, look, you can't ban the pollutants because this is going to cut into our profit. We're going to sue you for that. You may say, Gordon, this is not important. I'm going to come back to you and say, this is supremely important. Why? Because it is taking the power out of our government and giving it into the hands of the corporations, global corporations. You know what that means? It means that the power is taken away from you and I, who are the taxpayer and the voter. We vote. We vote. And we choose our senator, we choose our congressman, and they're supposed to represent our opinions. There was a story about a senator who decided to vote in favor of the company that was fracking somewhere in Ohio, I think, even though 90% of his constituents were against it. So you have that happening in America right now today. Congressmen, senators, even presidents, who are bought and paid for by these huge corporations. They don't care what you think. They really don't. Because they're paid by these corporations to pass these laws. Why are these trade agreements taking place behind the closed doors? Do you realize that even the Congress is not allowed to look into these negotiations? You realize that, right? Even the Congress is not allowed to look into the details of these negotiations. And if there is a committee where they allow them to look at it, they make them sign an agreement that they are not going to say anything to the reporters. And it doesn't matter, because most news, all news in America, all corporate news is controlled by the government anyways. Every single one. I don't care who you listen to. So, this leads to the situation that government can make laws, corporation can say, forget it. So, slide 32 says, a striking example was when the Swedish nuclear company took a case against Germany for pollution measures, and the German government settled and agreed to lower pollution controls rather than continue with the lawsuit. In other words, now the corporation has the power to control everything that your government does. So the New World Order is being implemented through these trade agreements. Human rights are going to disappear. Corporations, foreign corporations, are going to decide how we live our lives. And this is just scratching the surface of this whole New World Order. Investors, in slide 35, have used similar agreements to sue states and demand millions, even billions of euros in compensation. One example, slide 36, is the lawsuit of Swedish energy company against Germany for introducing environmental requirements for coal-powered power stations. Another example is Canadian gas and oil company suing against a fracking moratorium in the state of Quebec. It doesn't matter what state of Colorado votes. Our state of Colorado can pass any kind of a law they want, and once this agreement is passed, these corporations can come back and they can say, these laws interfere with our profit, we're going to sue you, pay up. So who controls all of a sudden everything that's going on in this world? The Tower of Babel story was the story of a few people trying to erect a temple to their gods and trying to control the lives of every person who was living on earth at the time. And God came in and destroyed it and turned it upside down and wouldn't allow them to do it. And today we have this situation where this is not a story anymore, it is not a possibility anymore, it's a reality. It's a reality that we are going to have one world government. That's a reality. And nothing can stop that movement. And any country that opposes that, they are going to be fined, they are going to have penalties on them, there is going to be all kinds of repercussions for any country that defies this new world system. And guess what? Most of the countries will jump at the opportunity to be a part of this. And when I say that this is just scratching the surface, what I mean about it is that in the end, this is going to affect much more than the trade. If you look at a slide 45, end result of all of this is one world government, and that particular world government obeys the corporations or the elites who are on top. No borders of any kind. People can go wherever they want to go. control over every human being, and population reduction. And what I also believe that's going to happen next after that is that it is also going to pass a law that will demand a religious compliance, like they are already in the process of doing with this whole Sunday thing in Europe. Now, when that happens, you're not going to have a recourse. We are losing our rights here in this country. We are losing our privacy. Our government has your profile. You know what your profile is? Every one of you who uses a computer, your computer has a number, ID number. Everyone, every computer, every iPhone, every phone, every laptop, every desktop, it has an ID number. And everything that you do on that thing goes into your profile. Goes into your profile. And you can go, if they want to, they can print it out and see what you did 20 years ago. Which bill you paid, which bill you missed, which mortgage payment you missed, when did you have a car accident, how much did you get from a settlement, anything and everything about you. What sites you visit on the websites, on the internet, whether or not you are a political person, whether or not you sympathize with the state of Israel or the state of Palestine, whether or not you say things on Facebook that are not appropriate. There is a profile for every one of you. Everything that you have ever done, seen, pornography, anything. It's all there. Government has it. This is the reality that we live in now. And when these laws are passed and done and organized and put in place as they are already, you have no choice but to obey. You have no choice but to do what they tell you. Because they control your credit card, they control your bank, they control whether or not you can buy food, they control whether or not you can pay your mortgage. What happens if all of a sudden your bank doesn't work for you anymore? And you write a check to your landlord and it's no good, even though you have money in the bank. And you go buy groceries and your card is no good. You can't pay your car insurance. Just think about that for a minute. How long does it take at that point before you're homeless on the street? But this is where we are going. Revelation 13, 7-9 says, also, this power was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on earth will worship it. This is what the Bible says. Now, this boring stuff that we have read through confirms this verse. Look at this verse. It's almost uncanny. Authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And everybody, all who dwell on earth, will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Everybody who is not the follower of Jesus, everybody who has not chosen to lay down their life for God, will worship this other power. And what is this other power going to be? Look at this next point. Ellen Stofan, she's the NASA's chief scientist. This is what she said. I think we are going to have a strong indications of life beyond Earth within a decade. This is not some dummy. This is a person who works with the latest technology, who knows the latest secrets of the United States government. And she says, I think we are going to have definite evidence within 20 to 30 years. What are they preparing this planet for? Look at her next statement. We are on the verge of things that people have wondered about for millennia. Within all of our lifetimes, we are going to understand that there is life on other bodies in the solar system. And now listen to this. We're going to understand the implications of that for life here on earth. So what if the next, after the one world government is established, the United States is a very powerful country. It can do that if it wants to. One world government is established. They're in charge of the whole planet. And the next thing they do is the full disclosure. And they say, look, we know there is life on Mars and life on all of these planets. And these beings from these other planets, I'm going to talk about this next Sabbath, who these beings were. Those were the same beings that the Tower of Babel was supposed to be dedicated to back in the day. And your one world government says you're not going to be able to buy or sell, you're not going to be able to live unless you pay homage, tribute, worship to these people who have come in and seeded the planet Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. My personal opinion is that this is where this deception is going, in that direction. When I look at what the Catholic Church has done with this whole extraterrestrial research and how they are saying that aliens can be baptized and all of that nonsense, you know, when I look at all of that, I think this is where this is going. Where all of a sudden you're going to have a moment in the history when you will have to choose who you're going to worship. Open your Bibles with me. I want us to look at just a couple of texts as we close this study. Ephesians 6, verse 12 says, there is a nice Bible in front of you in the pew. You can look at it for a second. It says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. That's who we are fighting. All of this stuff that's going on right now, I believe is done in the direction of the powerful evil beings. Satan wants his worship. He wants his crown. He wants his throne. He wants to sit on the throne of this earth, and he wants everybody to worship him. And therefore he says, take up the full armor of God. And I'm going to let you read that on your own when you get the chance. Read the full armor of God. Put it on. See what it is. You know, as we have read some of this material, as we have talked about this today, you may be tempted to get a little bit depressed. You may be tempted to get a little bit scared. You may be tempted to say, wow, this is too much. I don't know if I can handle this. This is too depressing. You may be tempted to do that. But you shouldn't. Because there is a couple of other verses in the Bible that I want to leave you with. And one is Revelation 20, verse 4. Anybody knows what that says? Revelation 24. Then I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus and because of the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received the mark on their forehead and on their hand, and they came to life and reigned with God. For how long? That's right. So this is what God is promising. You know, we are facing the hard times ahead. We are facing the times when life is not going to be easy. We are facing the times when we're going to have to make choices. But God says, look, I'm on your side. One last text I want to leave with you for your edification and for your uplifting and just for the encouragement. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 to 9. Apostle Paul says, let's start in verse 7. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, so that the surpassing greatness of the power will be of God and not from ourselves. I love this next verse. Look at this. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Isn't that something? We are afflicted every day, but we are not crushed. Perplexed, but not despairing. Persecuted, but not forsaken. We're not despairing because we have our God, the Father, on our side. We don't care about being persecuted because God has not forgotten us. He has not forsaken us. Struck down, but not destroyed. Even if you are struck down, even if you're killed, even if you're torn apart and destroyed in the earthly sense, physical body, you cannot be destroyed. You cannot be destroyed because God is on our side. He has your life in His hands. He's the source of all life. He can give you the life eternal. He can give you something that is beyond anything that people of this earth, Satan and his powers, can take away from you. Amen. That's how God is. So we are afflicted in every way but not crushed, perplexed but not despairing, persecuted not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed. And then he says, always carrying about in the body the dying of Jesus. What is our purpose? You know, some people say, how do I prepare for all of this? How do I hide from all of this? Well, right here, how you do it. It says you carry in your body, in your soul, the dying of Jesus. That's why we do communion. That's why you get baptized. So that you're reminded every day of your life that Jesus had died for you. When you are reminded every day that Jesus had died for you, you at that point realize how much you are valued. How valuable you are. You're not just some bug that's going to get smashed on a windshield of life. You're not. Jesus, if you carry about in your body the dying of Jesus, you then have the recognition of how important and valuable you are. So we are carrying about in the body the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. That's why. So that you do not repay evil with evil. So that you do not hit back at those who persecute you. So that you do not curse, but bless those who do you harm. That's what the life of Jesus is. Because remember, the purpose of all of this is for the good to defeat the evil. And you cannot defeat evil with evil. You can only defeat it with good. So that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to remember that Jesus died for us so that we can live for Jesus. For we who live are constantly being delivered over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh. And I'm going to leave you with that. The power to overcome the New World Order and the persecution and the trouble and the death, the power is in Jesus. It's in Him. It's in remembering His body and His blood. It's in remembering His sacrifice for you. And I want to call on you to rededicate your life to Jesus every single day. Not just on Sabbath. Every single day. Like when we were singing this morning. That was a rededication of your life to Jesus. Because you participated in that. And you came before God with these young people of ours. And you said you recognize who God was in your life. Through the words of those songs. And through the words of the prayers. And through the words of the Bible. May God bless you. Next week we are going to talk about Anunnaki. We are going to talk about the extraterrestrials. We're going to talk about the final deception that is going to literally take the lives of billions of people on this planet. And I mean take away their lives forever, for the eternity. God bless you. Thank you for being here this morning.